What's going on, moms and dads? My name is Dr. John Caruso. I am a pediatric prenatal family wellness chiropractor in Katy, Texas. In this video, we're going to dive deep into milestones and brain development and all of the cool juice within all of that. And so stay tuned for the rest of it because this is information you're not getting anywhere else. And so when we start talking about development, and we're not just talking about the milestones like rolling and crawling and walking and talking, we're talking about the foundational piece of it. And so in our journey as parents within the first year of life with our children, we witness pretty stinking astonishing growth and development. And so the question that I get asked time and time again within the office, especially from parents, is how do we know that our baby is on track with these critical developmental achievements? Because the pediatrician just kind of dismisses it for the most part. But, in our traditional medical world, these milestones serve as markers for tracking a child's growth, but then also identifying potential concerns at early stages. And so you and I both know that no two babies are exactly alike, and no two siblings are alike for that matter. And many babies don't necessarily reach their milestones at certain months, especially when they're compared to others. And so if this is a question that you guys commonly have for yourselves, then you're not alone, at all, actually. Because so many parents want to find answers as quickly as they possibly can when their child is hitting a delay. And plus, with these milestones building on each other, where and what they're actually struggling with becomes to be quite messy. And so developmental milestones, for example, progress to bigger accomplishments or bigger tools and skills that they'll then use to learn and connect and navigate and process the world. And so in this video, what we're really going to do is walk you through the order and the sequence of these milestones to help get children unstuck if they're experiencing any specific delays. So this video is exactly for you parents, and I hope that it serves as a roadmap, primarily to help ease any worries, but also to know what to look for, and also, the most important, is not feeling overwhelmed, especially as first-time parents, and how your baby is growing and developing. So the most important thing that I can share with you within this video is something that you will absolutely not hear or have explained to you, for that matter, in a traditional pediatrician's office. And it's this: the order in which your child goes through these milestones will matter far more than when they achieve them. And what this specifically means is that it's more troublesome for a child to skip a stage of development or miss a milestone entirely or altogether than it is to be slightly delayed. For example, skipping crawling is more troublesome and problematic to their overall brain and neurological development than being a couple months late to walking, talking, and so forth. And so when we start going through this and you guys are like, oh my gosh, this is my kid, this is my friend's kid, this is my teacher's kid, this is our mom friend group kids, share this with those moms, share this with those parents, because you know that they need to hear it the most because they're not getting it anywhere else. One of the cool kids that I want to share with you guys today when we're talking about development is a kid by the name of Aaron. So Aaron was a 23-week born kiddo, so very, very early. And with all of these kids, I share with parents all the time that their trajectory of growth and development and all the cool things that you typically will see, rolling and play and waking up to seeing that their hands are a part of their body and passing toys back and forth between their hands, or even just making the baby coos and noises, it gets pushed in a big way because there's a large bulk of development that they didn't get in utero because they're earth side at that point. And so when Aaron came into my office, parents were most concerned with reflux and they were most concerned with constipation. And as we started to move through and I gained more information and knowledge about Aaron primarily, we really started to uncover a lot of these big, gross, and fine motor milestone delays as well. And so Aaron wasn't crawling, and he wasn't walking, and he wasn't rolling for that matter, and he was hardly sitting up on his own, unassisted. And so Aaron was doing all kinds of PT. He was getting seen by a lot of specialists, and they're all kind of scratching their heads of like, oh yeah, the nutritional piece is the reason as to why we're not seeing all of that. It's because he's low weight and all that. And I agree to an extent because that's a part of it, but it's not the whole piece. And so, what was interesting, and I told mom and dad this in the very beginning, I was like, look, what's going to be really cool is your PT is going to start asking questions. Your pediatrician is going to start asking questions as to why these things are happening so quickly. Because it happens when these kids start getting chiropractic care and they're receiving support to the foundational piece of all of these milestones, which is the brain and nervous system. And so at about 2 weeks into care, he started rolling. And about four or 5 weeks in, he started crawling. And the parents were like, oh my gosh, we can't leave him on the bed because he's moving. And they actually came in one morning and was like, yeah, he fell off the bed. I was like, I told you he was going to start moving and navigating and doing all the cool things that babies do. And they were so pleased with that. And the PT was like, I don't see anything like this with my other kiddos in this exact same circumstance. And I told them from the beginning, I was like, your PT's going to ask questions as to why things are moving forward so quickly. And so Aaron is thriving. He's playing. He's more engaged with his eye contact. He's making noises and vocalizing as babies typically do. And the thing was, we had to move backwards to then moving forwards because the foundational pieces matter before we start going into our motor movements, and then even for speech and cognition, which we'll talk about at length in just a little bit. But as I talked about earlier, as pediatric chiropractors, we are more concerned with the order in which these milestones and development, or even the stages for that matter, happen, and how well they're linked or coordinated together. And so as parents, looking at things on a calendar or by age helps us to become aware of potential challenges or developmental delays. But what it doesn't do is allow us to identify the root cause of that potential problem or develop a specific action plan to help get your baby back on track. So to keep it super simple, the development of the nervous system happens in 3 primary phases. So phase 1 is phase 1 is technical difficulties. Phase 1 is the foundation for your precious newborn baby. And so phase 1 includes things like eating, sleeping, pooping, calming, and then the robustness of the respiratory system and the immune system. So eating, like our latch, our swallow, digestion. Sleeping is more of like the soothing and calming, being able to be put down to go to sleep, staying asleep, not necessarily needing contact naps. Pooping is more of like the motility or things moving through and the absorption of the nutrition. And then obviously respiratory and immune, how things are draining and pumping through, going into the lymphatics to the gut, and then getting it out of there. Phase 2, when we start diving deeper into it, or part 2, as I have it on my slide, is working through the movement as well as the coordination. And so to get super technical, the first part of phase 2, especially when we talked about the head and neck control, as well as the upper torso and the arms, overlaps a lot with phase 1, because essentially our head and neck control for our babies plays a really big role with how we eat. So latch and feeding, the coordination, the efficiency of how we're eating, whether it's on the bottle or the breast. Then our movement within the upper torso plays such a big role with tummy time, especially when we're looking at the first 3 months. Then we move into things like rolling over and sitting up and crawling and then walking. And I love to throw in jumping and skipping primarily because those are 2 big things that get missed by just about everybody, especially when we're talking about our kiddos' pelvic floor health. So things like incontinence or toileting or potty training and stuff like that. And so you've probably often heard that your pediatrician or even your PT mentions that like walking comes before talking. And like absolutely, for sure, it does in most cases. But to expand on that, Speech and a lot of these like higher level cognitive functions comes after not only walking, but the overall coordinated and organized. Those are probably my two favorite words when we're talking about this stuff. The organized and coordinated and efficient movement system. So organization, coordination, and efficient movements within our motor system sets the stage for a lot of this big brain stuff that we start talking about of cognition and speech and focus and concentration and all of that. And so what we're really looking at with this is the fine neuro tuning of coordination throughout development. So not just like coordination of our motor movements, but coordination of the movements and processing and integration and planning of speech and concentration and social interactions too. And so when we start diving down into part 3 or phase 3, these are the advanced functions. And so they take multiple zones and hemispheres and communication, primarily throughout our brain, working together to then execute. And so they need a really good foundation, primarily from phase 1 or part 1, as well as phase 2 or part 2, for those things to then happen. And this is exactly why children who struggle with sleep and constipation, immune health, or coordinated motor movements stay stuck and delayed within their social as well as their speech and cognitive development as well. And so here's the highest level of developmental functions within part 3 or phase 3. So we have our speech and communication, there's socialization and play, there's behavioral and emotional regulation, cognition and learning, and then I love to throw in these two at the bottom. So their sense of self, who they are within the world and who they are as it relates to other people. And then the planning, time, and flexibility, because those things really feed deep into emotional regulation and behavioral stuff as well. And so outside of the question of how do parents keep their or understand and know how their child is progressing or developmentally appropriately, the next biggest question that then gets asked is like, why do children miss these milestones? And so the number one factor that we see over and over again that contributes to missed milestones, not just within our babies, but as they start to grow and develop, is birth trauma and stress in early development. So birth trauma or in utero stress specifically can affect crucial brainstem and cerebellar regions and their wildly important role in developmental milestones. So birth is traumatic for your baby for numerous reasons, including their position in utero, whether that's breech or sunny side up or transverse, or the duration of the birth process. So a very, very short birth or a very, very long birth, or things like interventions like inductions and epidurals and C-sections and vacuums and forceps. And so these all cause high levels of physical tension on the delicate tissues and structures of the brainstem and the upper neck, which is a crucial point of development, primarily because this upper neck brainstem area houses our vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve is responsible for autonomic nervous system regulation. So like the calm, cool side versus like responding and reacting to a stress, as well as the function of that system. The motor tone and coordination, the immune and digestive system function. So like responding to and reacting to appropriately, as well as pumping things out the way that it's supposed to, as well as social interactions and emotional regulation. The vagus nerve is the coolest part of our nervous system. And so the impact of these various stressors, primarily from a physical sense, on a developing baby or a developing infant's nerves and muscles in the head, the neck, and the upper torso is significant. And then this leads to subluxation, or what we talk about in the office is stress stuck on the nervous system, which is often the most underestimated and overlooked aspect when we're considering developmental delays and neurodevelopmental challenges in babies and children later on in life as well. And so, when we really start going back to the chart made simple, if your baby is displaying signs of, colic and reflux or constipation, or they're having issues with sleep, these are all really big indicators that there is stress stuck on or subluxation that's affecting the baby or the child's nervous system. And so stress at this early stage puts development out of sequence, and it slows everything down in the subsequent phases or the parts, primarily our motor movements and then the big brain stuff later on. And this is exactly why we go to the basics to heal first, because that's the catalyst for what needs to come next. The biggest thing that I share with my parents that come through the office with their kiddos when we're talking about developmental milestones is that we look for these big soft signs of progress. So typically with these kiddos, yeah, maybe their development's not on board or where it should be. And so maybe they're not pooping, maybe they're not sleeping, maybe they're not calming. And those are all big things that we look for with all that then feed into the motor milestone aspect of it. But the big soft signs that I look for is like, are these kids sleeping better? Are they pooping better? Are they calming better? Are they not getting sick nearly as often? Because those are the foundational building blocks for their motor tone, coordination, balance, and movements to then come back on board. So that way we can feed deeper into speech, communication, and cognition, and all of the really cool stuff that essentially makes us more human as we start to grow and develop. So what do we do with all of this information? And in our office, it starts with finding out to what degree and where precisely within your baby or your child's nervous system there is stuck stress and tension and subluxation. So we always start with an in-depth case history and then exam of your child, of your baby, and then we utilize the amazing neurotechnology called the insight scans to be able to identify exactly where and how much and if there is stress stuck on. And so for Aaron, that was struggling with pooping and reflux and crawling and rolling, the scans and the exams that we did were addressing the pattern of subluxation or stress stuck on with the neurological system, keeping the motor system bogged down, keeping the digestive system altered and impacted in a really big way. And so when we started getting him adjusted, that's what made all of the difference, because he was already doing nutritional intervention. He was already doing PT. He was looking into OT and all of these other pieces. But once he started getting adjusted, that's what created the change neurologically to then allow for things like his sleep, his reflux, his digestion, his pooping, and then the motor movements that then came after that to really take hold. And so, like I shared with you guys earlier, after the first 2 weeks of starting neurologically focused chiropractic care within our office, he was pooping better, he was sleeping better, and he started rolling. And then at 4 or 5 weeks, he started crawling. And those were some really big things for this family and for this kiddo. And like I said earlier, the PT was baffled with how he was blowing through these big plateaus. And so when we go back to the examination and the neurological scans that we use here at Haven Family Chiropractic, these tests and exams and scans really only take minutes to use. And the one thing I always share with parents is that they are absolutely and entirely safe. They're not invasive. It's not an x-ray and there's no radiation. And what they actually do is it helps us to find exactly where those areas of altered tone and tension within the neurology or the neurological system and then the muscle system are, so we can understand how to address it moving forward. Specifically because baby and kid milestones can evolve so much, and the rapidly developing brain and nervous system are quite intricate systems. And so helping babies so early and kids so early gives them the right sequence and the momentum to not just like grow appropriately and hit these milestones, but allow them to thrive, and then sets the stage for the bigger stuff that then comes after. So what I always love to share is that if this video resonated with you and you have questions and you have comments and you have concerns and you wanted to start a dialogue and a conversation, ask any of your questions below. Leave us a comment or even send us a DM if you don't want to make it public. The other is just share this with other parents, other families, and other Facebook groups who need to hear this, because this is the information that they're not getting anywhere else. And lastly, check out some of the blog posts on our website, because we go into this in a much deeper depth with some of that and some of the other topics or conditions associated with developmental delays. So I look forward to hearing from you all soon. We are always helping and wanting to be able to be there for you all.